Welcome, everybody. So I'm going to jump right in and tell you first what is Trellis. But the majority of the time, I will actually talk about why you should consider Trellis in your network. So Trellis, as you've heard, is production ready. It's a multi-purpose leaf and spine fabric. So you see leaf and spine architecture that is well known. And you can connect compute nodes, upstream nodes, routers, as well as access, downstream nodes, access nodes. And so what you see on this picture over here is the software stack that we have in each of the nodes. But there are basically three core principles behind the Trellis. And that is, first and foremost, it's SDN based. So it runs on an ONF cluster. It's a set of applications that run on an ONF cluster. It's a traditional SDN, classic SDN. And it talks to the leaf and spine switches with the software stack that I'll show you in a second. But very importantly, we use white boxes. So bare metal switching hardware with merchant silicon ASICs inside it. This hardware comes from the OCP project, Open Compute project, and it's OCP certified. And lastly, it's open source. So you can try Trellis in your labs, in your trials, and you can take it to production. So very quickly, looking at the system components, as I said, Trellis is a set of applications that runs on top of an ONF cluster, and it uses OpenFlow 1.3 to talk to the hardware. We also use netconf in some very specific circumstances. So that's the dashed line between what is the software in classic SDN mode outside the box, talking to the hardware. Inside the hardware, the OCP certified bare metal switching hardware, you have ONL, Open Network Linux, and ONI, which is the bootloader. That also comes from the OCP project. And so there is typically also the actual work is done by the switching ASIC that today in production we use Broadcom switching ASICs. And they all have their own proprietary SDKs. But what Broadcom has done is built this layer on top of it called OFDPA that virtualizes that abstracts the underlying ASIC. And creates an open API, so you can put an OF agent on top of it to talk to the external controller. So Trellis, everything that we have written is completely in open source. Every line of code that ONF writes is open source. And this is, so when something goes into production, it's not as if there's extra stuff in what I've shown over here. There may be other applications that may be sort of operator specific, but what we do, what we support is completely open source, and it's hardened, and it's production ready, okay? You have also other open source software that goes inside the box. And when it comes to the Broadcom software for trials, there is a community edition, that is a binary that we offer from our website. And when you go to production, there is a commercial edition and again, that is available from Broadcom, okay? So Gilad talked a lot about redundancy, reliability. Trellis is redundant. There's multiple spines, multiple links from the leaves to the spines. And multiple leaves can be paired to dual home servers or external routers. And internally, of course, it uses ECMP hashing to go between the leaves and the spines, and then again from the spines down to the leaves. So that's the hardware, that's the data plane. But even in the control plane, we run Trellis on top of an ONF cluster, and ONF itself is redundant. It's not an active backup system. Many people do run controllers where it's only a single instance of the controller, or maybe an active backup system when all the work is being done by one. And if it fails, then a backup takes over. ONF is not like that. ONF is N-way redundancy and scale, how I like to call it, where N can be 3 nodes or 5 nodes. And all of these nodes are active simultaneously. So, and Trellis runs on top of an active ONF cluster. So there's a lot more that I could tell you about Trellis and the features that it supports, but I encourage you to go and look at our website right on top, where there is a white paper that we have written, a platform brief, if you wish, and on the last pages of that, all the specifications you need to understand what features Trellis supports and what you will need to bring up Trellis. Okay, so I would rather now focus on why Trellis. Okay, there is a lot of fabric options out there in the industry, so why should you consider Trellis? So first and foremost, Trellis is really designed for the service provider access and edge. And so let me tell you what I mean by that. Okay, so if you look at a typical central office or a cable head end, okay, if you put Trellis in there, with the leaf and spine architecture, connecting to compute nodes, access nodes, and upstream metro core routers, when you think about it, the types of traffic that a central office or a head end needs to deal with, there are many different kinds. So you can get GTP encapsulated traffic from base stations, from remote PHYs, you can get L2TP encapsulated traffic. From ROLTs, you can get double VLAN tagged or PPPoE traffic. Okay? So Trellis has a number of features that deal with these different kinds of traffic that you don't normally find in data center fabrics. Okay? Similarly, the types of switches that we use also are things that are not typically found in data center fabrics, switches that have deeper buffers, bigger tables, many QoS functionalities. And very importantly, Trellis itself can be distributed. So Gilad talked about it a little bit, where you have a head end, a primary head end, where all the compute is stored for doing NFV-like applications. But then the actual access is deeper into the network, closer to the end subscriber, where you can have these field office or secondary head ends, which aggregate the traffic through leaves and spines, a second stage of leaves and spines. So in Ilad's presentation, those were written as DAS and in hierarchical aggregation switches that can backhaul the traffic from the secondary nodes to the primary nodes. So these are features together that make Trellis more appropriate for service provider access edge solutions. Okay, SDN. As I said, Trellis is based on SDN, and SDN really helps simplifies and optimize certain features. Okay, I'll give you one example of this. Suppose you're at home and you're flipping channels on your TV. Well, every channel flip is like an IGMP join message that goes upstream, and these are then trapped by Trellis, and Trellis figures out, okay, a subscriber is asking for a certain channel. Let me make sure that that channel actually exists in the network. Or if it doesn't, let me request that from upstream. And then Trellis just goes ahead and programs that particular multicast IPTV stream to all the subscribers that have asked for it. Okay? So if you compare this to traditional networking and the successive PIM and IGMP filtering and multicast routing protocols, Trellis is a lot simpler just because it's based on this SDN paradigm. And there are many such examples like this of Trellis simplifying features. And once you simplify those features, it enables optimizations much easier than compared to traditional networking. So if you want to learn more, this is just one example I gave. If you go to our booth in the booth area, you will see more examples of this simplification and optimization. And obviously, Ilad has also talked about the CapEx and OpEx benefits of SDN. Another very interesting thing that is not yet in production, but we have that and you can try it out, is that Trellis now works with P4 switches using P4 runtime. The next-gen SDN interfaces P4 runtime, GNMI, and GNOI. And we have an example of this where in a different project, what we have done is that there is a BNG functionality that we have implemented in a P4 switch. And the same Trellis applications that you see as part of this CEBA pod, the same Trellis applications are used, and we just added another app for doing BNG control plane. Okay? Whereas the data plane is actually implemented in a P4 switch, and the combination of a P4 switch and a switch that is inside the OLT. So I really encourage you to go and learn more about how we are using Trellis inside CEBA with a P4 switch at the booth in the booth area. And finally, and very importantly, it took me a long time to get this, but this is probably the most important part about why you should consider Trellis. It's open source. And with that, what it does is that the operator, right, the network operator like Comcast, it gives them ownership of the code, right? It gives them the power to customize and prioritize the features they need. If they see that there is a feature that they need, they can write it themselves, right? And there are many such examples of our work together where they have either optimized an existing feature or they have written a feature themselves and contributed it back to open source. They have taken that code and they have added REST APIs and performance metrics that they have then integrated with their backend system dashboards like the ones you saw from Ilad's talk, right? So one example of an optimization, in production, we found that there are certain routes that only need to be actually available on these couple of leaves, right? 120,000 routes that only needed to be in these couple of leaves, but everywhere else, we needed far fewer routes, okay? And this is an optimization that was implemented by Comcast and Infosys. Why? Because they have that source code with them. They've taken ownership of it and customized it for their particular use case. Very, very powerful feature, okay? So that's Trellis and why you should consider Trellis in your network. There are use cases that I've already talked about being optimized for service provider access and edge, how we are using P4. There's a couple of other use cases that I'd want to bring out that we personally are not working on, but we do encourage the community to work on it. So Trellis can be used as a data center, as an enterprise data center fabric as well. At its very core, it's just a layer 2, layer 3 class fabric. And so if you integrate that with an overlay network and you work with, create the plugins for OpenStack, Kubernetes, VMware, whichever virtualization solution you have running in your servers, Trellis can apply just very easily to an enterprise data center fabric. It can also be used as a chassis router. This is very similar to what Google did with its B4 project. So if instead of spreading the leaves and spines over your data center, if you put them all in a rack, your leaves are your line cards, your spines are the backplanes of that chassis router, and the servers which hold all the control software, well, that's like your route processor cards. So we do encourage the community to think about Trellis as a platform, a foundation for these other use cases. I just really love this slide. This is really my last slide, but I really love it because what it's showing you over here is that over the last 9 months, how Trellis continues to scale. So we are at around the capacity of being able to handle 120,000 routes. If you go 9 months back, that number was 10x smaller, right? Around about 10,000 routes. Okay, and this is only showing you 2019. If you go back another 9 months, okay, that number was 5x smaller so it was only about 2,000 routes. So this tremendous hard work that Ilad was talking about between all our partners, it has contributed to Trellis growing tremendously. We still have some ways to go. We really want to reach the 150,000 route scale, but we're getting there. And there's an immense amount of work going on between us and our partners, 2 of whom you will hear from next. So do take the chance to visit our documentation as well as the white paper that we have in these links. And with that, I'd like to invite George, who's the CEO of Edgecore, to tell us more about how Edgecore is involved with Trellis and ONF in general. Please welcome George.
Thank you, Saurav. Thank you, Saurav, and thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate all the enthusiasm and your support of ONF and open communities. First, I want to introduce the company, but before I go there, I would like to give a shout to ONF. It's been really a pleasure to work with Guru's Group. I wear a couple of hats. One is CEO of Edgecore Networks, but the other is being a board member of ONF. And it's been tremendous, high note from my team and myself being part of the team of this small nucleus of people in Menlo Park that's really changing the world. and we're honored to be part of that and contribute. So with that, let me talk about who we are. We are Edgecore Networks. We belong to Acton Group. Acton is the leader in ODM business for OEM, especially tier 1 OEMs worldwide. And as you can see, we have about 700 networking engineers. Acton hasn't wavered at all. In years, has been the core competency of hardware plus manufacturing and supply chain, and also making sure that it's a one-stop shop. And we have, as you can see, 700 networking engineers. It's all about IP-centric, Internet protocol-centric. We are part of Acton Group, wholly owned subsidiary of Acton. We also run two businesses inside Edgecore. One is our own networking, switches, let's say Wi-Fi devices with our own NAS. But most importantly, with all the open networking, we call it disaggregated networking in the community. And also the trust and momentum of Edgecore started about, I would say, Edgecore was founded a long time ago, but about 2004. But the visibility of Edgecore and the brand name and the momentum started about 6-7 years ago when we actively started investing and leading heavily this open networking or open source revolution, or you call it the push. And with that, we are also not necessarily a box mover. I want to make sure that you understand. I have about 100 or so software engineers that we enable our networking boxes, enable our customers, and push forward this open networking business. And we are very much actively involved with all open networking communities. As you can see, we're leading in OCP, TIP, and ONF, and Linux Foundation. We're definitely part of the whole community. So what we have done in the past, let's say 6 years, we have heavily invested, as you can see, in 3 areas of market segments in terms of providing end-to-end hardware, okay? From data center, from service provider side, enterprises, and managed services. We even done open Wi-Fi, MDU switches from 1G all the way to 400G. We're pushing the envelope of photonic switch, and we are investing heavily in this open, let's say, open hardware or open source, overall. As you also can see that we are OCP certified. We are platinum member of OCP, and also we use OCP channel to sell all these products. Now, how we are involved inside ONF? We are not just contributing and being part of ONF since the foundation of ONF, but we are, actively involved and pursuing these kind of exemplar products within solutions within ONF. As Saurav talked about Trellis and the whole Eli talked about Trellis, you can see we're actively involved in CIBA, next generation SDN, and ODTN. It's also about the transporter product that we have. It's called Cassini, that we are bringing the entire community into it and making sure that that also is part of this overall exemplar products that coming from ONF. Also, on Monday, we had a press release indicating that we are now even going further and investing more engineering in ONF, actually under auspices of Guru. And in Menlo Park, in the US, also worldwide, as needed, we're putting more engineering into this kind of activities. As Saurav also explained, you can see Trellis is an integral part of this infrastructure, that it's also can be used in so many areas. And I don't want to go through it, as Rob explained it very well, in terms of also you can push this into data center, enterprise data centers, and you can push it also into creating a virtualized chassis as well. Let me pass this because we don't have too much time. So let me give you a snapshot as why we Edgecore, without vainglory and self-serving. Just want to make sure you know that we are the largest, biggest contributors of open source hardware in the industry today. Here's a snapshot as what we have done. You can see majority of it is from Broadcom ASIC platform point of view, but we have done Tofino, we have done others, and as customer investment, customer requests, we can do a lot as well. We have taken Broadcom platforms from XGX, also Dune architecture, and you can see all of them, not only from, let's say, Tor and Spine application, all the way to core, disaggregation, front haul, back haul, SASAT gateways, and on. And we are actively pushing this inside OCP and inside TIP as well. So you can see the richness of our portfolio of hardware from 1 gigabit all the way to 400, and plus all the other access edge devices, including a lot of edge switching with, as mentioned, specifically for Trellis. You can have it in certain ways of dissecting the SKU in terms of bandwidth, in terms of TCAMs, in terms of more memory, in terms of max SAC per port, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, we have created this huge ecosystem of hardware, or I would say the end-to-end hardware, but we need software, of course. And with that, we have also been very active in the software community and created the entire ecosystem software, as you can see, for white box or bare metal disaggregated switching or hardware. It's open source area, commercial, and then newcomers are coming and putting this disaggregated back into aggregation and making sure that it is agnostic of any platform as far as hardware, ASIC, and also NOS. So that's the third element of what we're seeing of how this evolution is happening. We have, without exaggeration, more than 25 plus software partners. And per customer use, with customer choice, we can really customize the solution. But here, today, we're talking about open source, and we're talking about what we have done with ONF, with Trellis. But I want to make sure you understand that Edgecore is not just a box mover, just a hardware company, but we also enable a lot of software, and we help customer at the end in terms of how we develop software and how we really take this to market. Now, the benefits. All of us are here, I'm sure we really understand what are the benefits of doing this aggregation, open source, or benefit of open networking. First and foremost, it's not about just cost reduction. As Eli had explained, there is that element. But for and foremost, it's like giving you the freedom of being not locked into any vendor, taking the best of hardware, the best of software, per your really need of where you want to go in terms of your use case development, and putting it the right solution, tailor it to your application. And most importantly, giving your software, that's the element of SDN, giving your software the power, the ability to be modularized, the ability to really move forward and give you that freedom. Now, on top of that, you have the automation that's needed, virtualization, automation. Otherwise, as you have seen from Eli's presentation, how you can really bring that huge data center into a smaller footprint, et cetera, et cetera. And most importantly, at the end, of course, you have this whole community, like we are sitting here today, and I hope all of us contribute in terms of, feature and how we can take the best practices and put them in open source and give it back to the community in terms of velocity of development, modularity, disaggregation, excuse me. And of course, at the end, you get the benefit of cost reduction, okay? So, without further ado, as you have seen from Eli's presentation, it takes a community, it takes people to step up and take this to fruition. In terms of Trellis, because we were talking here about Trellis, We thank Comcast, stepping up, taking that, let's say, forward, pioneering it, and pulling us together. So in terms of go-to-market, as we have seen as best practice, we were providing the hardware leadership. As I said, we have about 100 and more engineers to enable software on top of that, all the way to the ASIC and top. We take open source components as an example and put them as a distribution on top of the ASIC and keep you APIs to move forward. So we're adding value on our hardware. That is the value enablement of our leadership. But we cannot really make it happen without a partner that is willing to take it all to the finish line and call it system integration. And we have created also one of the largest system integration partners. But today we're here with Infosys. I'd like to give them a shout out because they have been a great partner for us and how we have taken this Trellis to market with Comcast. And we are ready right now, as we're all talking about it here, that we can take this further, and now it's matured, and we can go commercialize it, and we'll pull you together. So ONF is leading it as giving us the platform as an example of product. We took it in terms of putting the hardware and infrastructure. And Infosys came taking it, adding the necessary bits and pieces together, putting it together, scaling it, helping all of us to move forward as a system integrator partner, plus overall support structure and making sure that there is a lot of backing and support behind it in terms of level 1 support, level 2 support, and level 3 support, and so forth. So the message is that this is ready. Trellis is ready, and we can really pull it in so many diverse solutions from SIBA, from next generation SDN, into, as Boss said, into other elements of, data center, specifically for enterprises in other areas of data centers. So with that, I will take questions if you have any, or I will pass it on to my partner from Infosys to take it over. Any questions? All right, Nitesh, thank you very much.
Thanks, George. Well, thank you everyone for being here. I'm Nitesh Bansal. I head the engineering services for Infosys globally. I'm a senior vice president. And the second hat I wear is that I also do have the privilege of serving the Ecosystem Supplier Advisory Board at ONF in the capacity of chairman for this year. And it's been, I must say, a truly learning and humbling experience to be part of this organization. A lot has been said by Saurav, by George, and of course, not to forget a fabulous presentation by Elad earlier, both on Trellis, its scope, what it does, how it has benefited the operators, etc. So I'm probably not going to repeat any of that. What I would do is maybe talk a little bit about some of the contributions that we've made and the learnings we've had on the way. And then, like George indicated, since we are talking about how to build the ecosystem to support this in a productive environment, what does it mean and how are we taking it forward? But before that, realizing the fact that not many may actually know Infosys that well, I'll just take a minute introducing the company, who we are. We are a next-gen technology services company. We've been in existence for over 37, 38 years. Just under $12 billion in revenue. We have over 228,000 engineers spread across the globe. We serve close to 1,000 customers across 45 different countries. And what we are most proud of in relevance to the forum today is that 8 out of top 10 telecom companies have chosen us as their strategic partners. That's the pedigree, that's the experience, that's the knowledge that enables us to serve the community today, to stand here, to talk with certain amount of both experience and understanding of the challenges of the industry. What we do for them is we design their next generation networks, which is the topic we're talking about. We have traditionally partnered with them in transforming their OSS, BSS landscapes, create the digitization roadmap, build new age networks in the areas that they were being built, and also traditionally worked with a lot of OEMs in kind of bridging the gaps, working with OEMs on one side, operators on the other side, in bringing the entire technology piece together. Across the value chain, we call it the digital thread, the ability to interoperate, the ability to pass data seamlessly across, to make sure that the networks are operating seamlessly and have a performance mindset. All of that enabling of digital thread has been a core competence that we've brought to the table for many, many years. When we started on this journey, looking at the open networking vision, we were instantly glued to it because it was something that we have always believed in. The vision of a disaggregated network where the power and the flexibility of control actually lies with the operator. And we believed that in order to do so, we needed to be part of a forum or a foundation or a consortium which was truly operator-led, operator-defined, which allowed for a creation of an ecosystem that is, and we know by necessity it has to be different from the ecosystems that existed. An ecosystem that brings in variety of new age players, software integrators and service providers together in order to create that capability that would be required to provide support to such disaggregated networks which are virtualized, which are software defined, which are run in a very different manner than the past. And doing all of that while making sure that the flexibility and control always remains with the operator. That was the reason we partnered with ONF. We've been always committed to the partnership. It's reflected in the fact that we have the highest level of partnership with ONF. We were in fact the first SI partner to join the ONF Foundation. Not only that, realizing that the largest community of developers actually lies in Asia, and there are a lot of Asians who are contributing to the open source communities, not just ONF, but also other open source communities. We took the initiative to bring ONF to Asia. In July this year, we conducted what was the first Open Networking Conference Asia 2019 in Bangalore. We have had very, very encouraging results. It was, to our assessment, we would call it a super hit because we had participation of over 400 people. It not only attracted a vibrant developer community that were either aware or already associated, but also those who were not aware and curious to know and work with ONF. These are the developer community that brought in 80 plus technical papers, which were evaluated by the architects and leaders in the ONF. And they were found to be extremely encouraging and very deep, and which becomes a funnel for ideas for us to take forward. There were more than 20 plus industry visionaries that participated. We had 70 or more companies come together. And that's what, like I said earlier, it was not just the developer community, but it also acted as a glue to bringing a more vibrant ecosystem of suppliers together that came together on a forum, and there were discussions that led to forging newer partnerships and ways of working together. So it's been a very successful experiment, has further strengthened our connects, and we continue to contribute to all the ONF platforms, not just Trellis, but also SIBA, Stratum, and Comac. Infosys has always been known for its ability to scale, our ability to train engineers and make them ready for the show time, using our world-proven training facilities and methods that we have perfected over so many years. Today, we have over 200 plus engineers who are trained and ready on variety of ONF platforms. And this, you can imagine, a couple of years ago, we all, of course, started from zero. Talking about Trellis in particular, I mean, that's the topic of the day, and it is obviously very, very close to our heart. I want to thank all our clients and, of course, the ONF itself to give us the opportunity to work on it. It has been a very learning experience. Not only have we had the opportunity to start shaping up the requirements and work on the reference architecture, but also through the labs and the trials and through the hardening and performance tuning of the releases. And it has taken the best of Infosys to bring that to bear. And we have managed to also leverage a lot of our research from the background of having done AI systems or having built high-performance distributed computing systems to bring those concepts and to play on those in order to help with the scalability aspects or performance aspects of Trellis, as we did. Saurav actually alluded to one of those examples, so I'm not going to repeat it. But that has been the kind of both the journey as well as the learning experience together. Working through this journey, we've done more than 25 new feature commits. We worked on over 70 code commits, 45 bug fixes, and over 10 complex features that we were able to contribute. A significant amount of effort went into hardening and making it production ready. But then ultimately it's the results that speak. And I would have taken a lot of time and pride talking about these, but then I think Elad has already done the job by showing that picture, right? The scalability, the virtualization brings a 10x scalability, getting the in-system uptime. Saurav talked about the 120,000 routes that we are able to scale to with over 250,000 flows that Trellis can handle. Something specific that we always pay attention to is that test automation, because you need to test these things over and over again, and unless you do it in an automated manner, it cannot scale. So over 200 plus automated test cases that were developed for the release, and this repository continues to grow, because as new use cases come in, you test more and build those. And then 80+% reduction in service outages, really bringing it to a carrier grade performance where it could be taken to production. We have obviously closely worked with ONF under the guidance of the architects and designers at ONF to be able to achieve this. And then truly coming to the point that George mentioned, where we're bringing Trellis to the market. Now, bringing Trellis to market is really not a function of as if we are going to launch a product. Trellis is available to all of you. But as we understand, if you are an operator who really wants to do a productive deployment of it, you need there to be somebody who could take the bottom line support of the entire release, who could make sure that you would get a commercial grade support service, that somebody is there who is the single neck to choke, that somebody will provide you SLAs and make sure that if there are other third-party components, whether it's hardware or other software components, then there are back-to-back agreements that they have in place that will enable them to take care of the entire stack so that you as an operator are not running from pillar to post. That's really our aim of doing this and truly what we mean by bringing Trellis to the market. Edgecore and Infosys have worked together through the reference architecture. So it's a well-understood technology play between us, but not only that, even with other providers, because of our pedigree and having worked in this sector for over 25 years, we have existing relationships. We are working on newer relationships and contracts to make sure that this will truly become your single neck to choke. What's the roadmap beyond this? Well, we are already, as you see in the box, Trellis in a productive version, the hardened and performing version is already there. We are working on something called SDN Managed Plane, an SDN-M, which allows the capability to have better control over hardware boxes, some number of unified dashboards That we believe will become a more complete design of what we call a network controller. In future, we would integrate things like hitless upgrades, P4, Stratum integration, automated regression suites, adding also performance and scale optimization and Metro Ethernet capabilities. All of this on the roadmap will be upstreamed as they happen. Some of these will align or will work with the ONF as they get into releases. Some of these are requests that we keep getting from our clients as to some things that they need earlier, which we will build so that these things can be taken into production faster, and we will upstream them as appropriate. This is the roadmap, and we continue to stay committed to both Trellis, making it market ready and supporting it, as well as to ONF to make sure that this community grows and we are able to bring more and more of the releases into production. Thank you. George? All right.
Please.
All right, so we have some time for questions. George, you want to join us?
Maybe George wants to join on the stage as well, yeah.
So one question for clarification and then one serious question. You said single neck to choke. What is that expression? I've never heard it before.
So on a serious note, the single neck to choke has been an expression used in the operators world for a long time, which is to say, when there is an operational issue, we don't have to start looking for who to go to. There is always one single party to go to, and they don't point fingers saying it's not my problem, somebody else's problem. In the back end,
So
they take
it's avoiding finger pointing.
I'm sorry?
It's to avoid finger pointing.
It's the way the contracts have been done. Yes, it is to avoid finger pointing and avoid wasting time, right? So one party who's responsible for making sure, regardless of whose problem is it, we will get it solved.
Okay, so the serious question is for you and George. How do you cooperate to do the system engineering and test? Do you send your software engineers from Bangalore to Taiwan, or how does it work?
But we also have software engineers in Taiwan. But yes, your point is...
How did you do it? How did you do it for Trellis, for example?
George, you want to answer?
System integration.
We have created, let's say, platforms in US, in Taiwan, and it also in India, and we share that across remotely, or also, you know, to make sure that we're accelerating, and we also have the time zones, and we put the software as necessary and bang it, and make sure that all the there's a you know, like a team of task force really pushing it. And this task force is 24/7 in terms of changing, you know, time zone, let's say, resources, and make sure that a bug is really, if it's really hardware, if it's ASIC, if it's down to, let's say, the infrastructure of hardware, we take it and we really do it whatever we can with their help, and of course also using ONF as the like the architectural oversight. And this way we have roles and responsibilities as to who does what, and that's how we push forward.
And also, I think, just to clarify, we also have Edgecore equipment in our labs in Bangalore, which is where our engineers are working on it. And that's where the core development, making sure that interoperability is taken care of, making sure we are leveraging the best out of the hardware in the way the code is being written.
So when you do the final acceptance test and you check off, are the Edgecore and Infosys engineers in the same room? I would think so, rather than having to do it remotely or one site versus another.
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to. Are our people in the same room?
No, I think at the end of the day, you know, the architecture team signed it off. But let's make sure that, as an example, in this case, Comcast was the one saying done. So we take it from Comcast back to the architecture team, back to us, in terms of where the responsibility resides, where the skill set resides, and who's doing what. That's how we do it. But in terms of the final checkoff, in terms of acceptance checkoff, it's Comcast, as an example.
So did Comcast provide you then a list of checkoff procedures?
Yes, of course.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Right. In today's world, it's really not necessary for all of us to be in the same room. I mean, the last time I went to Philadelphia was, I think, back in March, but we talk to them every day, all of them.
Yeah.
Right?
It's the distributed agile way of working that we have all been working on.
It's a worldwide task force 24/7. Any other questions?
All right. Looks like
Right.
none. Well, thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank you very much.
everyone.
Thank you.